The boy had only used the simplest drawsword slash, yet it shocked the woman known as the Sword Saint. It looked as if Ronan had unleashed a single strike, but in reality, it was 3. Moreover, he had deliberately slowed the speed of the final strike, as though afraid the professors of the Empire's first academy wouldn't be able to see it clearly. This arrogant act enraged the Sword Saint, who furiously demanded to know from whom he had learned his swordsmanship. But Ronan had never systematically studied any sword techniques. All of his skills had been forged through hundreds of battles in his past life. And the reason Ronan was able to return to the present was because of a woman's translation. 3 immensely powerful four-winged giants had suddenly descended, rampaging throughout the empire. Within a single week, they had destroyed more than half of its territory. In order to stop the giants, the punitive corps that Ronan belonged to was annihilated. After giving everything he had to slay the final giant, Ronan's own life also reached its end. Alone, he gazed at the horrific scene before him, his heart filled with desolation. But then, a strange voice suddenly rang out. It was my negligence, Ahahute. I didn't expect someone as powerful as you to be here. Ronan turned in shock, discovering that the voice came from the giant he had just killed. Enraged, Ronan stomped on its face. Because of you, half the empire has become a barren graveyard. Why are you still not dead? He bared his blood-stained teeth, sneering, Do you know how the other 2 giants died? One was burned to ashes by the flames of the red dragon, and the other was sealed forever by a mage. He thought these words would anger the giant, but it was unsurprised. Strong one, don't use shallow words to describe the truth. The children of the stars can share senses. I know exactly how they died. I also know that those who fought them have been wiped out. There are no more warriors like you left on this land. The world you sacrificed your life to protect will eventually be drowned in starlight. Before it could finish, Ronan's sword silenced it once and for all. After that, Ronan wandered aimlessly, wanting to see more of the world in his final moments. As he sank into grief, he faintly heard a weak cry for help. Dragging his wounded body, he followed the sound only to be stunned. It was none other than Grand General Adation, still alive. Relief washed over him. Seeing Ronan, Adation immediately asked if the war had been won. When he learned Ronan had slain the final giant, the general sighed in relief. Thank you, Private Ronan. Ronan seized the moment to make a request. Since you're so grateful, could you at least give my comrades a proper burial? Usually, punitive soldiers' corpses are discarded, but they fought with honor this time. They deserve a worthy grave. The general admitted he was too weak to handle it himself, and that Ronan should see to it. But Ronan began coughing violently. You might be overestimating me. In this state, every second I live is borrowed time. It's a shame. I still have so many things undone. The general then asked what he would want to do if he could live on. Ronan's eyes lit up. I'd probably go study at the academy. That was my late sister's wish, but I guess I won't get the chance. Our family will be reunited soon. Just then, the sky suddenly cleared, and rays of dawn shone down. Both men widened their eyes in fear. A colossal 8-star giant appeared above. The 4-star giants they had slain were not the limit. The true peak was 8-star, and countless 4-star minions surrounded it. Despair filled Adation's face. This was his 3rd time fighting giants, and this was the end. But Ronan's eyes only hardened. He drew his sword and told the general to use levitation magic to send him up for one final battle. The general was stunned that even in hopelessness, Ronan refused to retreat. Suddenly, Adation thought of something. He grabbed Ronan and kissed him, pushing a glowing bead into his mouth. This bead can reverse time 4 times. I've already used it 3. It's the secret of how a mere tailor like me became a grand general. The last one. I entrust to you. I believe you are the key to stopping the destruction of the world. And if you meet me again, persuade me to stay a tailor. When Ronan opened his eyes again, he found himself back in his childhood hometown. Staring at the familiar scene, he could hardly believe it. Adation had told the truth. 10 years remained until the giant's arrival. Could he really do it alone? But then another thought struck him. if this was real, it meant he could see his sister again. Grabbing a tree branch, he sprinted toward his home. On the way, a gang of bullies caught his attention. Ronan was shocked by what he saw. The bullied boy wasn't being hung with rope but suspended in midair by magic. Such telekinesis was rare even on the battlefield. To see it in a small village was unbelievable. The yellow-haired leader demanded more money. The boy said it was all spent on medicine for his sick mother. Furious, the leader ordered the mage to hang him higher. But kind-hearted Asher refused. Before Asher could undo the spell, Ronan struck him on the head with the branch. "If you don't stop, that boy will die." Startled, Asher quickly released the child. The thug grew angry. "When I tell you to act, you act. Do you not take me seriously?" Ronan pulled Asher aside. "Forget these trash. Tell me, where did you learn mind magic?" Nervously, Asher admitted he had taught himself from a cheap book bought from a traveling merchant. Ronan was astonished. Such skill from a low-grade text? His instincts told him Asher would be vital in fighting the giants. Meanwhile, the yellow-haired thug drew his sword and slashed at Ronan. But Ronan instantly saw his flaws. Though strong, his form was a mess. Calmly, Ronan sidestepped the blow. Panic flashed in the thug's eyes, but he covered it with bluster. "So you got lucky dodging once. Kneel and beg for mercy, and I'll let you live, minus an arm. I'll even take care of your pretty sister for you. Every time I see her, I can't control myself." Before he could finish, one of his ears was severed. Ronan hadn't been this furious in a long time. His sister was his only reverse scale. He would never allow anyone to defile her. The followers were stunned. He had swung a branch with the force of a sword. Realizing they were no match, they threw all their money to the bullied boy and fled. Ronan then made a one-sided pact with Asher: meet him here in 3 days, or he would come looking. Soon, Ronan returned home, but he hesitated at the door, too afraid to face his sister. The last time, he had left without a word, never even seeing her again. Finally, when he did see her, he only managed to say, "I'm back," and handed her her favorite flowers. His sister was overjoyed. Never had she imagined receiving flowers from her brother in her lifetime. That stubborn boy had finally grown. Over dinner, an extravagant 18 dishes and 1 soup, she asked if he wanted more. He quickly refused. After the meal, Ronan told her he wanted to go to the academy. She was thrilled, confirming over and over if he was serious. She had long dreamed of sending him there. After hearing his answer, she skipped happily to a corner, rummaging through boxes until she pulled out a large jar full of gold coins. Ronan was stunned. She proudly put her hands on her hips. "I saved this to surprise you, so that the moment you wanted to go to the academy, you could." Ronan sighed and shook his head. "This isn't nearly enough. Keep it for yourself." Ronan's destination was none other than the Empire's most prestigious academy, Fulian Academy. It boasted the finest professors across the continent, backed by the royal family's immense wealth. But this also meant Fulian demanded the strictest admission standards and charged an astronomical tuition fee. More importantly, this was the very academy Grand General Adation had personally instructed him to attend. 3 days later, Ronan met Asher as promised. Without wasting words, Ronan told him that tonight he would test his psychic abilities to the fullest, pushing him to his absolute limits. Though hesitant and fearful, Asher reluctantly obeyed under Ronan's pressure. The results surprised Ronan. Asher was stronger than expected. His stability and height control still needed work, but the sensation reminded Ronan of the time when multiple mages had lifted him to match the giant's height, enabling him to unleash his full power. Excited, Ronan realized how rare it was to find someone with psychic talent. Mages were already uncommon, but telekinetics were almost unheard of. To think his second life would begin with such an ally. Yet, when Ronan tested further, he drew his sword and cut straight through Asher's magic. The boy was stunned. He had never heard of mana being severed. Ronan only told him to treat it as his special technique. In truth, even Ronan didn't fully understand it himself. His blade could slice through magic, injure the sword saint, and even wound Ahahut, the giant that no weapon could harm. Unraveling this mystery was one of his main goals in this life. But first, there was something more urgent. Tossing his bag to Asher, Ronan declared they had an essential task to complete before dawn, the key to reaching Phalean. Their target was a camp of Luna goblins, treasure-obsessed variants who gathered their stolen hoards during the full moon. Ronan ordered Asher to use telekinesis to quietly transfer the gold into their packs. Though terrified, Asher complied under Ronan's insistence, and before long, they had enough wealth to cover Phalean's tuition. Just as they were about to leave, however, loud shouts stirred the goblins awake. 30 of them charged forward, but Ronan only smirked. Calculating his borrowed sword's weight and durability, he determined he could strike 15 times, enough to wipe them out. In a blur of steel and lightning, Ronan slaughtered all 30 goblins in mere breaths, leaving Asher awestruck. Their victory was cut short when 2 men appeared, pretending to mistake them for prey. In truth, they were members of the infamous Caribru poaching group, known for their brutality. When one lunged, Asher immobilized him with psychic power, earning Ronan's approval. The other fell beneath Ronan's merciless blade, carved into unrecognizable pieces. As they searched the corpses, they discovered a chained bird, an intelligent creature, a dream bird, bound by Caribru's magic. Suddenly, it spoke with a human voice, startling Asher. The voice belonged to Baraine, a scholar in the imperial capital who studied mythical beasts and was the dream bird's guardian. After Ronan freed it from its shackles, the grateful bird gifted him a magical feather that would always point back to its true body. The next morning, Ronan and Asher sold their loot at the marketplace, finally gathering enough for Phalean's exorbitant tuition. Among their spoils was the strange object the dream bird had left behind, something Ronan first mistook for droppings until he realized it was indestructible and of great value. Ronan scratched his head awkwardly, admitting he couldn't figure it out. With a sigh, he thought he'd have to wait until reaching the imperial capital to ask Baraine. He then asked a merchant if there were any books about Phalean Academy. The merchant's eyes lit up. Perfect timing. My daughter is also preparing for the Phalean entrance exam. He called out toward the marketplace entrance, and soon a girl appeared, confusion on her face, Malaya. At that name, Ronan's body stiffened. He rushed forward. Are you really Malaya? Middle name, Sane? Startled, the girl nodded, asking how he knew. Ronan didn't answer, he was lost in thought. The Malaya he knew was a bold, masculine supply officer back in Alrian Fortress, yet here stood a woman. Instinctively, he leaned in and whispered, "You're actually a man, right?" Malaya froze, glanced at her figure, and thought Ronan must be blind or insane. Outraged, she slapped him hard. Ronan didn't get angry, instead, he felt a familiar force in that strike. In that moment, he was certain this fiery woman really was Malaya, the very same comrade he once knew, only in a form he hadn't expected. The realization almost made him laugh, which only enraged Malaya further. She lunged at him again, and Ronan struck her back, scolding, "Enough? I let you hit me once, don't push it." Their brawl escalated until Asher and the merchant rushed in, dragging them apart. Moments later, unbelievably, the two sat side by side, calmly discussing matters. Ronan produced 3 swords and a staff, asking Malaya to appraise them. She pointed out one, a black iron sword highly sought after by knights. Then she eyed Asher. "This staff must be for you. You're a rare mage, right? What kind of magic do you use?" Blushing, Asher admitted he could only use psychic magic. Malaya was shocked. "Psychic magic? That's incredible. If you perform well, you might even win a scholarship. You're practically guaranteed admission." Then she turned to Ronan. "What about you? What skill will you demonstrate in the exam?" Ronan blinked. "Skill demonstration?" Malaya explained, to enter Phalean, one had to pass both a written test and a practical exam, where nobles usually showcased family techniques, while warrior candidates displayed their personal combat magic. Confused, Ronan asked, "But if you're not a mage, how can you use mana?" Malaya gaped. "You don't even know basic battle mana control? You can't tell the difference between mana and aura? Are you serious?" To her, it felt like explaining magic to a toddler. Finally, she grabbed two of Ronan's swords. Fine. I'll give you special training. Don't worry, I'll repay you triple if they break. She began with a lesson. Mana is the root force of the world, like air, present everywhere, but only those who can sense and draw it may wield it. Ordinary students trained for a year could usually feel mana. But to qualify for Falian, one had to go beyond, mastering unique personal techniques. You, she told Ronan bluntly, can't even sense mana. And you dare dream of Falian? It's absurd. She added that aura was even harder, requiring at least 10 years of effort, even for geniuses. Ronan finally understood. He remembered enemies on the battlefield who had claimed to wield aura. Back then, he hadn't realized how extraordinary they were. Still, they had all fallen to his blade. Enough theory, Malaya said, activating her mana battle technique. Let's test you in practice. In an instant, she was in front of Ronan, ready to strike. Malaya's speed startled Ronan, but even this sudden strike was easily countered. With a calm parry and a sharp counter, Ronan forced Malaya back several steps. Shocked, Malaya froze. He had thought to end the fight in one move. After all, in his eyes, someone who couldn't even use mana had no chance of entering Falian. Better for Ronan to face reality now than embarrass himself at the entrance exam. Yet it was he, Malaya, who found himself overwhelmed by Ronan, someone who didn't even grasp mana. Seizing Malaya's distraction, Ronan sent him flying back more than 2 meters with a single strike. Then he calmly remarked, "Your skills are decent. Forget mana, you have real talent with the sword. If you improve your sense of balance, you'll progress greatly." With that, Ronan turned to leave, reminding Malaya of his promise. Feeling insulted, Malaya shouted after him, only for his blade to shatter into fragments. Watching Ronan's retreating figure, he stood stunned. What kind of man is this? The next day, Ronan not only received enough money to buy 3 swords but also exam notes and past papers prepared by Malaya. Though Malaya wished to coach them personally, the merchant caravan had to leave, so they parted ways. From then on, Ronan spent his days studying exam material and his nights hunting beasts to strengthen his body. A month passed quickly, and at last Ronan and Asher arrived at the long-awaited Falian Academy. Asher was awestruck at the palace-like buildings, while Ronan's thoughts drifted. That man should be here too, perhaps I'll meet him at the exam. Asher suddenly asked if Ronan had brought the dream bird's feather. Ronan had intended to visit Baraine after the exam, but as soon as he drew out the feather, it trembled violently, pointing directly at the Grand Academy before them. At that very moment, Baraine was about to open a window when a terrifying face appeared outside. He and the dream bird both shrieked in fright. Clutching the bird tightly, he demanded, "Who are you? More of Ophi's thugs?" Only when Ronan raised the feather did Baraine realize. "So you're my saviors." Ronan was surprised too. The dream bird's master turned out to be a rare lion beastman and a professor of Falian. In their conversation, Baraine lamented that had he known his rescuers were applicants, he could have written them a recommendation letter. Still, he promised help even if they failed. Ronan cut him off, rejecting such ominous talk, and returned the egg left behind by Ophi. Baraine grew emotional. It was no ordinary egg, but a dream bird's egg, unique in a lifetime. He explained that such eggs absorbed the surrounding mana when laid, which determined what would hatch. One laid in a lava field might hatch into a firebird, while one laid in a beast's den might yield a monstrous creature. Ophi's egg, however, contained countless swirling, chaotic energies, impossible to predict. Moved, Baraine entrusted the egg to Ronan, believing Ophi had chosen him for a reason. Ronan accepted, curious about what would hatch. Before they left, Baraine also gave them a scroll marking a special training site. Later, at the Academy's skill test, Ronan stood before 5 professors, including the principal, Archmage and former sword saint, Nebaroj. Their presence alone was oppressive. Ronan saluted respectfully, and the test was announced. He would fight a magic-engineered golem. Drawing his blade, Ronan said, "Nothing special, just quick slashes." Professors laughed openly. The golem's defenses were legendary, even prodigies like Xu'er Lipan could barely leave scratches. The principal worried Ronan might falter at their mockery. But when Ronan struck, his speed was terrifying. His cut landed before the eye could follow. He calmly sheathed his blade and declared, "That concludes my demonstration." Professor sneered again, calling it a plain strike. Yet the principal was stunned, while Nebaroj leapt forward, sword at Ronan's throat. "Who taught you this swordsmanship?" he demanded, chest heaving with rage. Ronan, confused, insisted he had no teacher. Nebaroj pressed on, asking if he had seen his move earlier. Ronan replied honestly, "Yes, your swordsmanship is incredible, you swung 3 times in the span of one draw." Nebaroj flared. "Exactly like your demonstration. And you even slowed your last cut to hide your arrogance. Do you think we can't see through such a trivial technique?" Ronan stayed silent. The truth was he had slowed his final strike only to keep his last sword from shattering. The other professors bowed their heads, they hadn't seen a thing. After a tense silence, Nebaroj sheathed his weapon, returning to his seat, but not before glaring at Ronan. "I will teach you myself." The principal was stunned. It sounded like he had already claimed Ronan as a disciple. Then came the final question, "What do you most wish to learn at Phalean?" Ronan paused, memories flooding back, before answering firmly, "To learn how to live without regret." After Ronan left, the principal burst out laughing. What a difficult thing to teach. At that thought, Ronan smiled faintly. It seemed the general had been right to send him to Phalean. Here, he was sure he would learn much. Brimming with confidence, he walked toward the written exam site. After all, he had crammed for a full month, memorizing everything thoroughly. But when the exam ended, Ronan was crushed. Malaya and Asher looked at him in confusion. Hadn't they told him to study every book in his bag? Why had he only studied less than 30% of the material? It turned out Ronan had only pulled out a few books at the start, studying them so seriously that he forgot about the rest. Malaya was speechless. Was there really such a fool in the world? But seeing Ronan's devastated expression, he quickly comforted him, reminding him that the skills test mattered far more than the written exam. Just then, a massive magic circle appeared, listing the results. Asher found his name, 12th in the magic skills test, tied for first in the written exam. Malaya was 9th in both the skills and written tests. Excited, they hugged, their efforts finally rewarded. Turning expectantly to Ronan, they were stunned to see his pale face. His name was nowhere to be found. They urged him to look again, but Ronan said he had checked dozens of times, even the corners. Suddenly, a thunderous blast echoed through the sky. The academy was announcing the top 3 of each department. From the flames of the undying bird, a fireball shot straight toward Ronan and exploded before him, revealing his results. First in the skills test, 5,712th in the written exam, 2nd overall. Asher and Malaya cheered in disbelief. Ronan had ranked 2nd overall purely from his skill. Ronan himself was astonished, praising the professor's sharp eyes. But then a troubling thought struck him. If he was first in the skills test, it meant Xu'er Lipan had been defeated, and that man would not take it lightly. Sure enough, a cold voice came from behind, "So you're the one who ranked first." Xu'er Lipan, the future sword saint and pride of the empire, stood there. Startled, Ronan tried to deny it, but Lipan's piercing eyes saw through him. When Ronan blocked his sudden thrust, Lipan sneered. "If you weren't first, you wouldn't have been able to react. Show me your true strength." Annoyed, Ronan unleashed 3 sharp waves of sword chi, which Lipan barely fended off, his hands trembling from the force. Ronan declared, "This is my strength. Satisfied now?" But Lipan lunged again, demanding he reveal his hidden power. Realizing the man wouldn't stop and fearing Lipan might unleash his aura, which Ronan's body couldn't withstand, he turned and bolted, dragging Asher to hide behind as a shield. Lipan shouted in outrage at his dishonor, but Ronan only smirked. "You're still the same, bound by your so-called knightly spirit." Then he punched Lipan hard in the nose, whispering, "By the way, Asher is a man." Blinded by pain, Lipan staggered, and Ronan fled with Asher. Soon after, guards arrived, shocked to see Lipan injured. He brushed them off, refusing to pursue Ronan, though his cracked sword made his eyes blaze with excitement. At last, he had found a true rival. "Ronan," he muttered, "I'll remember you." The next morning, in a forest near the imperial capital, Ronan and Asher followed a map to a site Professor Baraine had marked, the Penareldosem River, a precious manna vein. Manna coursed thickly through the air, enough to turn common stones into magic crystals and weeds into rare herbs. Asher was stunned. It was his first time feeling such immense magic. Even Ronan's dragon gallbladder glowed brilliantly, absorbing manna at a frightening speed. But Asher suddenly grew uneasy. Doesn't it seem strange? Professor Baraine said such a place would attract countless beasts, yet we haven't heard a single sound. His words chilled Ronan. Rising, he caught a faint trace of blood in the air. Asher, hide. Trouble is coming. Sure enough, 5 mana-charged blades whistled out of the forest. With one swift stroke, Ronan split them all in two. He recognized the craftsmanship immediately. It was a special weapon of the Caribru poachers, only granted to hunters who had succeeded in over 100 raids. Hidden in the shadows, the poachers who had launched the attack gaped in shock. What the hell is that guy?